Hello and welcome to Assembly Required Mass Online Rally 2020. I am Chris McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80 from the Full Force podcast, and joining me for this very special panel today is my good friend, host of Articulated Points and the Full Force podcast, Joe Declassified Alumni and G.I. Joe Knowledge Supercomputer, Patrick, not Picard, Stewart. Now, based on the theme for this year, Mailaways, we thought it would be a fun idea to look at a forgotten fan club from the UK which never really got off the ground, G-Force. Never heard of it? No problem. Let's fill you in. First off, Pat, how are you doing, buddy? How's it going?
Doing really well. I'm excited to be here for AR and hoping that people take note, and maybe if AR happens in person, we'll see everybody there next year.
Absolutely. This is a really cool idea, actually. Like
the
whole virtual thing. And obviously, I've kind of been enjoying it from all sorts of different kind of perspectives and different cons that have kind of continued on, but in a virtual sense. And I think this was the right way to do it, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Well, I think it kind of forced us into a lot of new fun things, because this never would have happened, I don't think, if things hadn't been as they were, and all the stuff that Hasbro's been doing has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I don't necessarily think that we need to not do this again. I think that it would be great to do more things like this in the future.
Let's just keep doing Assembly Requireds every single week, because it's not a lot of work for us, is it, mate? Anyway. Right, let's get into what we're here today to discuss for the panel for everyone watching. All three of you. I'm kidding. There's probably going to be loads. We're going to get into a kind of a brief discussion on like fan clubs in general. We'll talk about the US stuff. We'll talk about the UK stuff, and then we'll get into this fan club that never really got off the ground. And it's really interesting actually, because it was quite eye-opening, the amount of people that kind of vaguely remembered what it was in the UK. And then nobody knew what it was in the US. So it was also very new. Like, I've known about this for so long. Like, it was one of my favorite fan clubs that never actually got off the ground, and if that's the thing. And I remember it vividly. So for me, kind of knowing about this for so long, I just thought it was common knowledge. And so when I spoke to you about this years ago, you kind of a couple of years ago, was it at Assembly Required, Pat?
I think it may have been at Joe Fest.
Oh, okay. I remember breaking some sort of interesting news at Assembly Required with you. I think it might have been those early drawings of Lightfoot and Hit and Run and stuff like that. But okay, yeah. So going back to Joe Fest, when we had that long conversation in the bar, didn't we? And we spoke to a number of guys about it, and they just couldn't remember anything about it.
And it was strange for me, because one of my most early interests in G.I. Joe, even prior to really being online, was all of the stuff happening throughout Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, Action Force stuff was really exciting for me. And I actually looked into a lot of this stuff and had never heard of this club.
Crazy, isn't it? Let's start off with the US. I mean, obviously, Mailaways were a big thing. There's obviously, we had stuff going on in Palatoy, and you guys were kind of also doing the fan club stuff in the US, weren't you? So I mean, like, what was it? To you, like, what were the Mailaways to you, like, personally?
My first one, I was super excited about G.I. Joe in 1982 after getting Cobra Trooper for my birthday, and so my first Mailaway fan club was the Mobile Strike Force, 1982. It included G.I. Joe web belt that I didn't take off for years.
Still wearing it.
Pictures of me. Yeah, I have a couple of them now that I have to put together.
To get around the circumference has grown a little bit, has it?
Just a little. But it is a lot of fun for me when I look at old family pictures, because a lot of times that web belt is in there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it included like a web belt and a membership ID card and iron-on transfer and 2 newsletters, because you got one with your initial club, and then they promised that you would get another one later, and I did, and it was great with that Duke art right on the front.
Yeah.
That I found interesting whenever I got to be an older G.I. Joe collector is looking into the past to see other similar fan clubs The 12-inch guys had that in 1964. It's almost the same deal. It had the iron-on transfer, the membership card, the dog tags. It very much was something similar. So fan clubs have been around in G.I. Joe for a very long time, pretty much since the very beginning.
Absolutely. And I know, obviously, in the UK, Palitoy were doing the same thing. Like they'd done the mail-away fan clubs for all of their different brands in Action Man and Action Force. So it was one of those things as a kid that you, personally for me, like, you see the offer on the card or the leaflet or something, and you just get all excited, and it's like, I've got to fill this in immediately, and then you take it to your parents and you're like, I need this posted stat, and they're like, we'll do it when we can, you're not the boss of us. And then there's a big fight. I'm kidding, but like, you'd like want them desperately to just post this so that you could get it in time. And obviously the other aspect about this was that the post back then, I mean, I know promos that would be like 6 to 8 weeks before you get anything back. So you'd like forget completely about what you'd even sent off for. And we're going to talk about in the D-Class panel, if it hasn't already happened, depending on when this goes out. In the D-Class panel, we're going to go through a lot of those different mail-aways, and we'll probably talk about this in a lot more depth. But I mean, how long was that wait? It was like a lifetime, wasn't it?
It was. I definitely was not a kid that would forget. I think that the mail-aways were my version of an "Are we there yet?" Every day going to the mailbox. I think I would probably. It was 6 to 8 weeks as well in the United States was usually the estimate on almost any mail-away, and I think I'd probably wait a week or two.
Yeah,
I would start to expect that thing in the mail, which is absurd. That's what I did as a kid, and I would be disappointed every day until that thing arrived.
Mate, I swear to you, I would forget completely that I'd even sent off for it. Like, it would be like a couple of days where I'm like really excited and buzzing that, oh yeah, Super Trooper or Special Corps or, whatever it might be. And just being like, or like the first Action Force fan club I think I really got involved with was the one with the fold-out pack. Getting that, I'd completely forgotten it was coming. And they even had like all these little like booklets and tapes and maps and games and file cards and pens that you could like, you could write something and then it would be invisible, and then you'd scribble over it with the other pen and it would appear. So it was all this kind of cool stuff that came with it. That kind of leads us into this quite amazing, like, failed fan club. Now, in 1983, Palitoy Action Force had the fan club. In 1985, we had another Palitoy Action Force fan club. 87 was the fold-out thing for UK. It was so much fun. Yeah, but another aspect of it were the personalised letters. So, like, you'd always get, like, a sign-off from Flint or Hawk, kind of added to this incredible universe that was being built as a young child. Did they do the same in the US? Were you getting like sign-offs from Hawk and Flint and so on and so forth on the letters?
Not very often.
That's such a shame, because in the UK that was like standard issue,
Yeah.
Oh man. Anyway, so like it's kind of like a marketing genius move, right? So, and again, something that, again, we'll talk in the D-Class panel, that even Kirk Bazigian took from Palitoy, in a sense. Like, they were kind of mulling over these mail-aways and how to do them best in the early years of the 1982 G.I. Joe kind of release. And, even Palitoy became like an influence on what they were going to do going forward. But let's transport ourselves back. So I'll take everyone through this little story of G-Force, and we'll get into that now. Now, obviously, Pat, you don't really have much of a say in this little storyline, unfortunately. But obviously, we will stop every now and again, and we'll discuss what I've just talked about. Now, as a 10-year-old Action Force G.I. Joe, the Action Force, and of course, during this branding phase, a G.I. Joe fan, I was always clamouring for new fun mail-away adventures, and in 1991, I stumbled onto a pack-in leaflet promotion with quite a lot of the action figures. Now, in the UK, Action Force had started life as a smaller version of Action Man in 1982, which coincidentally coincided with the US release of Hasbro's G.I. Joe. The strong relationship between the two companies resulted in Palitoy using G.I. Joe figures as vehicle drivers for their main Action Force line, and by 1985, it was all just rebranded G.I. Joe figures. In 1987, Action Force International Heroes restarted under Hasbro and ran for a few years under that branding, before the mini-comic pack-in transatlantic treaty in 1990 brought both G.I. Joe and the United States and Action Force in the UK and Europe into a combined form known as G.I. Joe the Action Force. Now, in 1991, we had switched entirely to just G.I. Joe, and it was during this period where a brand new fan club emerged known as G-Force. The flyer for this promotion was packed in with seemingly every single figure I picked up around that time, as I ended up with a lot of them. Let's talk about that ridiculous amount of rebranding that went on in the UK. Now, as a US kid, you just knew it as G.I. Joe, and that's how it stayed the entire time. But we were getting it chopped and changed every year or couple of years.
I guess my only exposure to that was after it had all happened, and I got back into G.I. Joe in like 1989.
Yeah.
I took a little bit of a brief time off, like toward the end of 85 to sometime in 89. And when I got back into it, I was approaching it more as a collector rather than a kid buying and playing.
Yeah.
And so I heard about this and thought that it was just insane that all of that had gone. And I really loved a lot of the earlier Red Shadows, Z-Force, and SAS and that style thing. So it was almost a shame for me that I didn't get to have my cake and eat it too, as far as having G.I. Joe and continuing on with super interesting repaints. I mean, I see why it happened. It was great that everybody kind of got everything at that point, but looking back, I still would have loved to have had even more repaints. I mean, I guess you still had like Mutt and Spirit.
Yeah.
In the UK, and obviously the Tiger Force.
Oh my goodness.
As a collector at that time, I would have loved to have had even more.
When the Tiger Force figures kind of started like seeping into the UK, that was, I think I was caught by surprise initially. It was Outback and Psych Out initially, and I remember getting both of them in Tiger Force. And I think Psych Out regular version was available in the UK, but and a Sneak Peek as well. He came a little bit later. And I remember when Sneak Peek came out, I managed to get him, and he actually had one of these little pack-in leaflets. I've even got images of a few examples of the actual leaflet inside the actual carded figures. And funnily enough, most of them are like the UK exclusive Spirit, the European exclusive Hit and Run, and Sneak Peek from the Tiger Force team. It's funny that those are the only examples I can actually find on the internet. Now, I'm not even sure. I mean, I've got a lot of different carded figures at home, loads of loads of carded figures. And I can't think off the top of my head if I have any with that leaflet in them. I'm going to have to, when I go back to the UK, I'm going to have to go through every single one of those figures just to see if there's one in there. That's one thing I haven't actually done yet. But it felt like it was in every single figure in that year, kind of like late 90, like going into 91. Although it was more basically into 1991 that it happened. So I just remember seeing them everywhere. And what was funny was, like, I filled one out. Let's get to the next stage of the story. So I remember being super excited when I saw the new flyer, having been involved in a few fan clubs and mail away promotions prior to this one. They interestingly used the Pulverizer and Recoil, who appears in the box art for the driverless vehicle, for the promo, which, when you consider the description, was an odd choice. So let's talk about that description quickly. An elite vehicle driving team called G-Force has been formed, combining all the most skilled and experienced drivers selected from all G.I. Joe troops by its commander, Dodger. You are amongst those honoured drivers called upon to sign up and join his elite force. We'll get onto Dodger in a second, but let's talk about that description to start off with, Pat. Quite a specific mail-away kind of fan club there, isn't it? Like a lot of the mail-aways were kind of quite broad and vague and everything, but this is like a specific thing, isn't it?
It is, and I think that it's a good one. One of the things that was kind of great about any of the mail-in programs, as a kid, I loved them because it felt like you'd have a second opportunity to get a figure that was no longer on the pegs.
Absolutely.
In this situation, as a kid, I definitely was not getting every single vehicle. And some of those vehicle drivers felt extra special.
Oh, yeah.
That. And so the possibility of having a fan club where you would get some of those vehicle drivers, it would be something really tempting.
Absolutely. I remember the Stinger, not having the Stinger. And the Stinger driver I always thought was really cool, but never ever managed to have it as a kid. So yeah, there were some figures that were just like, you know, if you didn't get the vehicle, they were like blooming. If you saw one, you'd be like Cutter, for example. I didn't have the whale as a kid, and I remember like one of my mates had that, and we went into his bedroom one day. He was a lot older. He was like about 2 or 3 years older than us, and his dad worked abroad, and he had all of these like vehicles and G.I. Joe figures that we'd never seen before. And like he was spoiled as hell, but they were all laid out on his windowsill, and he had like the whale and shipwreck, and like we hadn't seen shipwreck yet at that point, and like, you know, all these like characters, like it was honestly, it was mental. And I remember just being so jealous of this kid. James, his name was. Anyway, moving on. James Campbell. Moving on to the, I'm calling you out, James Campbell, you tiger! We will get to Dodger in a second, like I said, but the leaflet also explained what you would receive as a member of this cool new club, with more of the pulverizer and recoil on everything. That was an odd choice, wasn't it? Once you become a member of this special driving force, you will receive the items below, exclusive to G-Force members only. Newsletters to include competitions, secret blueprints, stories, and all the latest top secret information. Special offers available only to G-Force members. Membership certificate, free G.I. Joe figures. What? Membership card, decoder card, poster, stencil and stickers, and a badge. So everything on that list makes me salivate, but what did stand out above the rest of all those goodies were the free G.I. Joe figures. I mean, what does that mean? Figures we already had, new characters, exclusive decos, we just didn't know at this stage, but for £4.95 I was all about it. Well, my mum and dad were, but Pat, I mean, free G.I. Joe figures, what does that say to you? Do you think just overstock? Do you think, I mean, what's your kind of idea at this stage, looking at the leaflet?
Well, like we were saying, these Hasbro Direct programs weren't just to make things good for the kids. It was also to facilitate, I think, some things for the company. One of the things we often need to keep in mind when it comes time for vehicle drivers is that whenever Hasbro would be making a vehicle, the limiting item as far as fulfilling an order from a store would be the figures, because in the timeline of getting a vehicle to the store, the figures would be made in China or Hong Kong and shipped over, and then the vehicles would be made in the United States. They would have been made in Rhode Island, sometimes in Texas, and in Europe, I believe that they were being made in Ireland. So whenever an order would come in, you could quickly make whatever you needed at the local factory and make sure that you just met with that demand. But getting somebody from another company or another factory over in China and then having all that stuff shipped over would take some time.
Absolutely.
And weren't very big. So you could actually kind of over order on the figures, and it didn't cost too much to warehouse them. And then you could kind of right size your orders from the stores by having those on hand and ready to go. So I think that maybe what this was about was, by the time 1991 rolled around, there was plenty of a backlog of vehicle drivers. And whenever you started talking to me about this, I started just kind of poking around to make sure that I was looking at what was going on in the United States at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was 1992
that
we actually had a vehicle drivers mail-in ourselves. One of the offers actually has a set of 6 vehicle drivers. And then I think that same year, like, Keel Hall was available by himself. So there was definitely an effort to get rid of vehicle drivers or the overstock for vehicles that definitely were not going to be happening again.
Yeah.
I really think that this is where that was. It was, a win-win scenario. The kids get a figure that they couldn't have gotten otherwise, and Hasbro was going to get rid of some overstock.
It's true you mention that, because I've known a lot of instances where in the UK we'll get like a big batch of like bubbled, or not bubbled, like those kind of like red back carded vehicle drivers, where they're not being taken out of the vehicle box. They're just obviously like set and ready to go into a vehicle box, maybe in the factory stage, right? So there's a large abundance of those. What they obviously get sent over. I'm guessing they get sent over like that, or do they get sent over and then they're done in the factory on the card?
No, actually they are carded in China and
Ah,
sent over. I've seen cases of these.
yeah.
Actually, a bunch of Star Vipers showed up, and some other drivers a few years ago, where it'll be just a very large box, and there'll be like an entire page of all of them
Yeah.
just perforated, and they would just tear them off and put them inside the
That's
vehicles.
awesome. I mean, I've seen jammers like that. I've seen, all sorts of different kind of, packing. When you got like a playset or a vehicle, you get like a huge box of them. So obviously they're having overstock. Were they making more figures than there were vehicles, like to marry up? Was that just a case of having to do a certain amount of numbers of one and a certain amount on the other?
Yeah, for sure. They were definitely over ordering on all of the vehicle drivers. And whenever Hasbro shut down G.I. Joe in 1994, as far as the 3 3/4 inch
Hmm.
G.I. Joe, there was just a ton of vehicle drivers everywhere. I remember Cotswold Collectibles. You could just order a Zartan at any time. They had a ton of them by the hundreds.
Hmm.
The factories, or I'm sorry, the overstock I think still is out there, and people are still sometimes finding it. So there were quite a lot of vehicle drivers. They were intentionally over ordering them, knowing that they would find a use for them later. And I think this fan club is one of those intended uses.
Yeah, totally. So we were then instructed to flip over the leaflet for all enrolment details, and we got our first offer deadline at the foot of the form, 31st of August 1991. The flip side of the leaflet introduced us to the commander of G-Force, Dodger, from Battle Force 2000. Another interesting choice, even though in his UK single-carded release he was described as a half-track driver, he never actually came with a vehicle. Even in the USA he was the Marauder driver on the card, he never actually came packaged with that vehicle. Still, I expect they had a lot of excess Dodger figures to give away as possible free figures as listed on the other side of the leaflet, which may have dictated the need for this particular fan club and might even have helped construct the bio for it. Here's even more backstory on G-Force. G-Force is a crack team of highly trained mobile armoured vehicle operators led by Dodger. These vehicles and drivers are a lifeline for G.I. Joe to assist in defeating Cobra. Your help is needed too. If you'd like to join this special driving team and become one of its exclusive members, please complete the recruitment form below and send it together with a cheque for £4.95 made payable to G-Force to Dodger at G.I. Joe HQ, and he will complete all your necessary recruitment details. I love the fact you would have to send it directly to Dodger, and he was also in charge of completing all the recruitment admin as well. That's just brilliant to me. This was one aspect that the UK got absolutely correct. Making all of the characters real people to contact was such a fun idea and went a long way towards making this fantasy a very real thing. That was something for me as a kid that made this a really special experience.
Yeah, we definitely didn't experience that as much in the United States. I can remember a couple of the offers would have like the signature of Hawk at the bottom of it. And even now, I can look back at a few things and it feels like it's, Kirk Bazigian writing it. It's almost like you can hear his voice
Yeah,
and then the signature at the bottom. I'm not sure if that was the case, but it really feels that way a couple of times.
yeah,
Um, One of the things I find interesting about the use of Dodger is also the Sonic Fighters Dodger was right around this time.
yeah.
So I wasn't sure if maybe this was somehow tied into just kind of doing a promo for a figure that, maybe coming out, or was he already out at that point?
He was released in 1991 in UK and Europe, so he would have had his Sonic Fighters version would have been probably in and around that same year, in and around that promotion, because the promotion was August 91, so at the latest he probably would have been a summer release or at the end of the
Right.
summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously they had Dodger excess, I think, in some way, shape or form, because why would you have Dodger as the head and then not have him in any way, shape or form like in a physical like format? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there does seem to be a good chance of that. And I've seen some bagged figures with additional accessories, not from the UK, but from other areas of Europe. I think
Okay.
that Greece, there were a lot of bagged figures at the time. I've even seen like some of the Tiger Force and even Mutt from the UK coming out of Greece. So I kind of wonder if the idea for this, if it was a lot wider, I think I may have actually seen a bagged Dodger before.
That's cool.
Out of somewhere out of Europe. I'm not sure.
That's awesome. Well, again, yeah, like Greece is a big kind of almost like melting pot for this stuff coming out. Italy is like this. Weirdly enough, Italy has got this really interesting like situation going on, and I'm not sure I'm not sure like the explanation I was given, but it is true. But it was really interesting to me to hear that Italy has got like these warehouses full of old Action Force and like G.I. Joe stuff, like from the European releases and stuff, and it's all like pristine cases, loads and loads of this cool stuff. I got one of these like really cool backpacks with blowtorch on it, and it came from basically from a huge case of these from Italy. Now the story goes, and again, this is all speculation at the moment, we can't confirm 100%, but the story goes that because Italy was controlled in a sense, like shipping and the movement of product and so on and so forth, especially if there was a lot of money in it, tended to be controlled or had some sort of mafia ties going on. Now, I know that sounds a bit movie, but at the same time, you've basically got, like when there was a huge crackdown, there's been a number of times where there's been huge crackdowns in organised crime in Italy. And basically what happened was you ended up with these warehouses full of stock that just were going to, nothing was happening with them because it was under some sort of investigation or whatever it was. So you end up with all of these like warehouses full of stock that are now coming to the forefront where people are like finding them and purchasing them or getting hold of them and getting them out there. So there's a lot of stuff coming out of Italy at the moment if you want, carded, cool, interesting European stuff.
Same thing happened with Starcom. Actually, one of the people from Coleco UK, I believe it was, who had joined one of the Starcom message boards, told a very similar story of entire shipping cases going to Italy and disappearing. And the reason why that topic had come up was that a lot of new old stock was just being found. Those action pods. I'm getting kind of off the topic of G.I. Joe.
That's fine. It's fine. Go for it.
Of what you're saying. Yeah, the action pods from Starcom, the 6-shooter, a lot of that stuff for a brief time, you could actually get it, at any point.
Yeah.
There's a seller who's sometimes doing a Dutch auction, sometimes would just have a number of them available or keep relisting them out of Italy. And that's how I find they're very minty and nice. And I will also say that Italy seems to have really good taste in action figures, because also like Diaclone and Transformers, there's just a lot of good toys that were released in Italy.
Yeah, I must add, it wasn't just warehouses full of G.I. Joe and Action Force stock. It was warehouses full of toys, and like Transformers was another one that was a big part of that. That story that I was told, possibly from the same person, Pat, which is quite interesting there. Now, let's get back on to G-Force, because that's what you're here for. I'm kidding. As well as being urged to hurry up and join by the promo team, we also had a number of rules and conditions to follow. But hurry, membership is limited. The fight continues. We need your support in order to catch Cobra out. Rules and conditions. I like how they're trying to lead you into the boring stuff with some really exciting text there. 1. Membership applications must be made on an official application form and must be accompanied by a signature of a parent or legal guardian. I love that. It's like getting one of those like holiday forms signed by your parents when you go on a trip at school or something. 2. Each individual claim must include a cheque or postal order for £4.95 sterling made payable to G-Force. Imagine getting that cheque in the bank and thinking, who the F is G-Force? 3. All claims to be sent to Dodger, G-Force, P.O. Box 26, Wallingford, Oxon, OX10 0EE. I always love that. It's like Dodger, G-Force, and then this really British, hilarious address. 4. Closing date for receipt of applications is August 31st, 1991. 5. Please allow 28 days delivery from receipt of application, much quicker. Responsibility will not be accepted for claims lost or delayed in the post. Proof of posting will not be accepted as proof of receipt. 6. Please call 0491 34900 with any queries you may have regarding your claim. I really want to try that phone number now. And 7, membership is only valid for 1 year. The promoter is Hasbro Bradley UK Limited, Uxbridge, Middlesex. Like I said before, at the time it would usually take up to 6 to 8 weeks before you got anything back in the post, but this particular promo claimed you would hear back in up to 28 days from receipt of application. Still a lifetime in kid years though. At this stage, you would assume you would get all of the goodies up front with newsletters at regular intervals within that year, but it wasn't clear at all. I also assumed all would be revealed once I got that package back in the mail. Here's the recruitment form, which required your name, date of birth, address, and a signature from a parent or guardian. Pretty straightforward stuff. I love that signature aspect, though, from the parent or guardian. I mean, how would they know?
Yeah, and if you didn't send it to Dodger himself, what would happen? Like if you sent it to Hawk, would somebody get it in and go, no, not right?
Out you go, yeah. It'd be like, I'm not sending it to Dodger. I love the fact that they made him the administration for it. So it's like, you're the boss of this, but you're also doing the paperwork. Like that's how it works. I think I grew up thinking, yeah, all bosses must do so much work when you when you get into like companies. No, they do not. Well, some do, but most.
Sitting there in the future fortress filling these things out.
I've got to Photoshop that. That has to be Photoshopped in some way.
Just a little desk with like a tablet.
That is hilarious.
Mail from the kids.
Because he'll have to have all the future doodads as well, wouldn't he? Like a giant computer to do it in front of. I love how Battle Force 2000 was all like this future tech, and you look at it now and it just looks so bonkers. Like none of it is kind of materialized into the future, really.
No, that's what I used to joke to my friend that, whenever G.I. Joe got shut down, the Battle Force 2000 they were just selling Dippin' Dots because it was ice cream of the future.
That's so, in their future fortress
amusement park. That
is so funny and so true. So the recruitment form, I've got to talk about this as well. It was a much easier, much more basic like form. It was like I remember the Special Corps or your Steel Brigade. You had like this entire like friggin' like questionnaire to fill out. And it was all like box ticking and all that kind of stuff for the most part, but there was a lot more to it. This one is just like, get your details down, get the post and get the check in the post and just go for it. And also really cheap. Like that is for what you get, that is really cheap.
Yeah, that is really cheap. I mean, you're getting an entire figure. I was actually kind of looking at the prices of the G.I. Joe fan clubs over the years.
Yeah.
Whenever they did the one in 2002, I think it was, for the United States, where we got the G.I. Joe reservist figure.
Oh, yeah.
That one was $15. And that was up from the Mobile Strike Force that I had joined in 82, which was $5, which was also up from the one in 1964 that I'm pretty sure was just 50 cents.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's inflation.
Yeah, that's a really good deal.
It's inflation for you as well.
All of those were good deals because the one from 2002 was also a good deal because you got a T-shirt, and that was the only one that I can think of in the United States where we got a shirt.
Yeah, we got a T-shirt, I believe, at one point, like a tan one with Action Force on it. And I also remember that might have just been merchandise, but I think it was in a mail away. And also, what I really loved was getting this really cool hat. It was like that kind of flat top, circular kind of thing with the brim, and it had the little kind of patch on it. Now they sent us the hat and the patch separately, so they showed it off like with the patch sewn on, but then they sent you the two items completely set, so you had to put them together. And I always thought that was just I mean, I didn't as a kid. I'm just like, oh no, Mom, can you do this for me? And so she sewed it on, but it was like hilarious to me that they made you do. Obviously there was a time crunch in there, and they were just like, you know what, something got lost in translation in the factory, we're just gonna have to send as is. And I just love those little aspects about these things.
Yeah, you're lucky the figure didn't come just disassembled and you got a no ring.
Could you imagine? No screw either. You've got to go and get a screw for it. Oh my God, that would be the worst. Anyway, so as per usual, I filled out the form, got Mum to write me a cheque for £4.95 for a 1-year membership. I still find that amazing. And then proceeded to patiently wait for my goodies. in what seemed like a number of lifetimes but was more likely a month or so, I received a substantial delivery in a large letter-sized envelope with some awesome branding all over it. Now, this is something I will give them. Just the envelope this came in was remarkable. Just a normal, like a normal kind of letter. It wasn't a jiffy bag or a padded envelope or anything. It was just a standard, almost like maybe had like kind of vinyl or like material kind of feel to it. Like it was a bit more harder wearing than the usual paper envelopes. But, and I say that and it looks, it's destroyed because I've obviously opened it a billion times and kept it over the years. But it was, this kind of really cool top secret banner on top, the huge G-Force logo on there, which I really like. I really like that logo. I thought it was so fun and very military looking. Now, another thing to note on the letter, on the bottom, the really cool return address aspect. Now, this is something that should have set off a little bit of a red flag because it said, if undelivered, return to Dodger G-Force, P.O. Box 3, Wokingham, Berkshire, RG11 3HJ. Now, this is a different address to the one we were given on the form. In fact, we were given a number of addresses on the form, one to explain who the promoter was, Hasbro, in Middlesex, and one to send it to Dodger at G-Force. So it should, again, as if I would pay attention to that as a kid immediately and know that it was different to the address that I'd sent it to. It wouldn't have even dawned on me. Looking back now, that's quite an interesting kind of situation. When I opened it up and the letter inside, the letter as well, I mean, it looked amazing. The G-Force logo at the top, the white border, the phasing white to yellow main body with an official G.I. Joe brand logo and stamp. I mean, I think all the budget went on the letter design, and that's why I was informed in said letter that the club would not be happening. Now, I'll read this out in full. You can see my old address there as well, which is really cute. Christopher McLeod, 24 Seaview Road, Munsley, Norfolk, NR118DH. May 91, it's date stamped as well. So, dear Christopher, thank you for sending us a cheque/postal order to cover membership to the G-Force Club. Owing to present economic conditions, this club will not now be running in the UK. We are sorry that this situation has arisen, but hope you will accept the enclosed gifts with our compliments. Yours sincerely, Kay Leonard, Miss Kathy Leonard, club's manager. This is the first time ever I'd received a letter from G.I. Joe or Action Force or whoever that hadn't been from a character, hadn't been from Hawk or Flint or someone like that. So I was kind of a bit sad that all of a sudden this official thing telling me owing to present economic conditions, was sent by someone I had no idea who it was.
Why didn't you just conclude that there was a sweet Kathy Leonard action figure coming soon? She's there in the Future Fortress as well.
Admin Force. That would have been great, wouldn't it? Management Force. That's what it would be. M-Force would have called it. I mean, I was gutted, to tell you the truth, but the letter alone, I mean, that was enough for me to be quite excited just to see this really cool design. They went all out on just telling people that it was cancelled.
It's so weird to me because the clubs almost are a thing that exists mostly in a kid's imagination. You set off this amount of money, whatever it may be, and then you're told, hey, this thing lasts for a year. And, you have your card or whatever was included in the kit. Sometimes they're better than others. Even if you look at the ones from the United States, there are some in the U.S. that are mostly paperwork. I think there's one, it's almost all paperwork, and then it's a pencil and a miniature Frisbee. That's it. So the effort that it would take to send a kid a letter that says that it's not happening, I think they could have just sent the kid a letter that says, congratulations, kid, you're in.
Totally. I mean, I wonder,
put out your membership card that's at the bottom of this piece of paper.
Exactly, yeah.
That's it, I'm in.
Well, that's the funny thing about it, because despite the disappointment of the club's cancellation, I was happy to see that they had indeed included a number of the promised items mentioned in the promotional leaflet, including a sticker sheet. Now, I'll do these one by one and we can talk about them. So the sticker sheet now, the image I have of this sticker sheet is missing the one at the top. Now, it is just effectively a much bigger version of the vehicle insignia at the top. So yeah, like it had like headquarters insignia or something like that on the top. Now, I actually took that off on my version and put it on my cabin bed. So it was like at the top of like the edge, like the end that sticks out of my cabin bed, along with a couple of other stickers and stuff I had on there. So like it was there, you know, kind of displayed all the time. I was really happy with it. In fact, I think I pinned the poster that came with it, which we'll look at in a second as well, underneath it. And I do have a picture of that somewhere, but I've been struggling to find all of those images. When I go back to home, I rummage through all the images. Pictures. I just can't find them at the moment, but I will find that, I swear to you. And yeah, so that one was used, but then you had all these other really cool ones. So they did like jungle proficiency in this kind of camouflage. You had aero combat in blue. You had weapons expert in like gunmetal grey with like red on it. And you had the vehicle insignia, which again, like is a smaller version of the bigger HQ sticker. And then this nice long G.I. Joe sticker at the bottom. So really cool to start off with, just to get that sticker set.
Yeah, I'd really like to see a picture or something of the headquarters one or whatever it was that you said that you put on your bed, just out of curiosity, because I think that it's really interesting that they're making this all one cohesive team, but yet they are separating them out at the same time.
Yeah,
it makes me think that the intention was, you know, to kind of rationalize why you may be getting an Ace or a Thunder or a Cutter, that each of these actually have some specific purpose within G-Force. And honestly, as a collector now who just likes to see things revisited, I think it would be great to see this logo snuck in somewhere to the current G.I. Joe line. Wouldn't
it? It'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
And again, like, who knows where... I don't know. The other things kind of crop up when we talk about these kind of like failed things, because they're kind of forgotten about a little bit and no one really cares about them that much. You tend to like lose track of who designed it or who came up with like the bio story, or who, you know, designed the logos and stuff like that. And I kind of think, you know, that kind of information I'd love to know about and see again, like, the process they went through in designing. Are there other kind of designed logos out there? Just silly stuff like that. And that, you know, that's, I think, being in the Joe community, like, you know, and seeing like your the D-Class guys and them doing, you guys and, you know, and Chris and everyone else involved in D-Class, and Troy, who's obviously on the panel next or before us. I don't know how it works, so you're just going to have to trust me on this one. You know, like, being involved in seeing all of the ins and outs of this stuff really bugs me that I can't find the information out for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that person probably would have more information, or would hopefully have some recollection of what else this club would have included if it hadn't been canceled.
Exactly.
To you anyway. I really wonder if they had any idea what the meaning was behind the plural figures.
Yes, I know. That is the one thing that really interests me to kind of find out. Anyway, kind of moving through, we had a G-Force Stencil Card, which was amazing. I did use this a couple of times, but very carefully, because I was very, very careful as a kid. So I would just kind of put the pencil in the line and kind of and use it. I wouldn't like spray over it or anything like that. I would just kind of gently utilize the stencil. I drew it on a couple of notepads and stuff, nothing like crazy, and I only used a pencil. That's the kind of kid I was when I had these figures. It's why I have so much of the admin, the paperwork, the toys I had as a kid, or all, like, a lot of them are in perfect condition. There's a couple at the early stages, like Quick Kick and Flint and Snake Eyes version 2, and all those guys are a little bit knackered. But as you get into the line, they're all like complete and no breakages. I was very careful.
You probably were very careful then whenever you were writing the word force, because on the stencil that's not cut out. So
I didn't. So you get the I think I'm gonna have to find this on a note on
afterward, right?
Yeah, on the notepad. I think if you were to see it, I've just drawn it in by freehand at that part, and it looks horrendous. I don't have the image for that, unfortunately. But anyway, Yeah, I believe it came like that as well. There wasn't anything to push out. I think it was already stencil form that you got it in because I don't remember kind of pushing out the bits to make the stencil.
Yeah, it would have been something that would have been, cut, like die cut or something.
Yeah, and anyway, and if anyone actually this is the other thing as well. If anyone's watching this remembers this, they have their GeForce stuff. If you got different things, let us know as well. That's another interesting aspect, because it could have been they were just grabbing whatever they had at hand, throwing it in a package, and then by the time they got to like the last person on the list, it was just the letter and like a couple of figures. It might not have been. They might have run out of paperwork by that point. So it's because Palatoy as well as Hasbro used to do this all the time. They used to kind of just grab whatever they had at hand and dump it into stuff. And I know that's happened in South America with a lot of those kind of. Let's not get into that.
Very different way of getting rid of overstock.
Continuing on, we also had a poster showing this European exclusive artwork, also used on a European fold-out product insert of the Frag Viper and Alley Viper standing behind a Hiss 2 battling DJ and Rock and Roll, with the back end of the Rolling Thunder in the background. Not the expected imagery of the pulverizer with recoil in the driver's seat, but I really like this image. I think it's really dynamic and vibrant and kind of cool. And again, they threw a GeForce logo on it and a G.I. Joe logo on it, and boom, there's your poster.
I wonder what materials that they had available in order to make the poster. Back then, I think they probably still would have been using transparencies for any kind of licensing or, ephemera. And that poster, that art, I should say, was made for the UK. That's not something we had in the United States.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe the availability of that being nearby may have been one of the reasons why that was chosen for GeForce. I think it's strange that it primarily features not vehicle drivers. Not that the pulverizer with recoil would have.
Yeah.
But at least it was an attempt at featuring the vehicle.
Yeah.
The idea of vehicle drivers, whereas this is...
I have a feeling that, like you said, it was availability of transparencies probably, or materials. It was and it was also, hey, this has got vehicles in it. Let's just use this. Not realizing that the Frag Viper, Alley Viper, DJ, and Rock and Roll aren't vehicle drivers. I suppose DJ isn't even one, is he? I suppose does he get the pulverizer in reality when you think about it? Because that was a Battle Force 2000 vehicle after the fact, wasn't it?
I think that by default they do. He does, but I don't think that actually is on...
Doesn't say in his card or anything, does it?
I don't think so. I think it's just, hey, we have one extra Battle Force 2000 character and one extra Battle Force 2000 vehicle.
You get the pulverizer, DJ. Get on it, mate.
Right, yeah. It is one of those things where Battle Force 2000 was pretty much pitted against the Iron Grenadiers.
Yeah.
Grenadiers carried forward a lot better than Battle Force 2000 did. So,
how dare you?
Wow.
I'm kidding. In fact, I remember getting DJ in the US because and thinking, oh, cool, there's more Battle Force 2000 figures. Like, I was really excited about that. And the funny thing was, we wasn't packaged Battle Force 2000 on the like Dodger and all those guys. They were just G.I. Joe figures. So I only knew about Battle Force 2000 because I've been in the States. So like, and it was kind of quite interesting aspects to that as well. Like, they didn't mention the vehicles in the figure file cards either. They just said like half track driver or whatever the vehicle was, like pilot and so on and so forth. So I always thought that was quite interesting. And the thing with the poster is that, yeah, DJ's the only one that you could even remotely kind of put in a vehicle, with that, like we've said, that caveat that we've kind of said. And what another interesting aspect to that poster is, I looked at the vehicle in the background behind DJ and Rock and Roll, and I was like, is that the Slam? And then I was like, no, it's not the Slam. I couldn't for the life of me work it out. And I put a message out to everyone in the group. And like, I think a few people came back with like loads of ideas what it could be. And then Justin was like, it's definitely the Rolling Thunder. And it's like, of course it is, because it's the back end of it with the little missile on the gun and everything. And I just hadn't dawned on me. Like, it's drawn in such a crude way that kind of, it's like, it's got a charm to it, but it's also like the gun droops. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? It's almost drawn in a hazy way to indicate that it's off in the distance,
Yeah.
but I don't know that that's necessarily clear.
No, I mean, and like it took ages to kind of figure out. Yes, that's the Rolling Thunder, and you can make out like obviously the wheel next to rock and roll and everything. So it is definitely the Rolling Thunder. But it's funny that those two vehicles come up, but then that's it. And also, no pulverizer, no recoil. Very interesting stuff. Anyway, the final addition to the slightly shortchanged GeForce fan club pack included one of those free figures that were mentioned. Who could it be? I was so excited to see. Oh, it's Tomax. I already have Tomax and Seymour, but now I have another Tomax. Great. No accessories, just the figure. Interesting. Couple of things. One, he is most certainly not a vehicle driver, and two, he's not part of GeForce, considering they all consist of G.I. Joe drivers. Clearly he was just thrown in as an afterthought, but I was still very happy to get what I did, even if I did miss out on the newsletter, membership card, membership certificate, decoder card, and a badge. What was even cooler about this Tomax was the fact that he had slightly different shade of purple hair, which turned out to be the US figure and not the UK version I had, which was slightly darker. I always thought that was quite interesting as well. Like, I didn't know that at the time. I saw there was a difference in the two figures, but didn't realize that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, we ended up getting both of those in the United States. One was the retail one. The other one would have been the mail-in.
That makes a lot of sense. And obviously the mail-in one was one they used for us as well.
Yeah, and whenever I mentioned that those mail-ins for the vehicle drivers earlier, Tomax and A.R.M.O.R actually were a set that in the same actual catalog or offer, I guess I should say.
Interesting. I guess that makes a lot. That ties that into why we would get that as a figure option for GeForce. And again, quite interesting. I mean, like, effectively, they're all vehicle drivers. Anyone could be stuck in there and drive a vehicle or whatever. But and I guess like they're like a, what's the word, like a deluxe set in the past. So maybe like there's that feeling around it as well. Like it's not just not like a pack in with a vehicle, but there's more to them.
Yeah, but it still had to feel weird. I mean, you
did
that indication of you were going to get free figures, plural, and then you just get Tomax. Whenever you're playing with your Tomax, I suppose play with it gently, because some other kid somewhere has Zaymot, and if yours gets hurt, his feels it.
That's amazing. I never even thought of that. I actually just turned into the Crimson Triplets. That's what I just had, the Crimson Triplets. That's what it was. It's for someone who's got like a bit of OCD. A little bit. Like, I like things to be in order. I like organization. So to have 3 Crimson Twins was a little bit like, what is going on here?
Yes, maybe it indicates that one of them is Zartan, and he technically was a vehicle driver. So
why didn't I think about these things when I was a kid? That could have been Zartan or Zorana. Or Xandar. Did he ever dress up?
Not that I can think of.
Baroness did. Baroness, Zorana, Zartan. I know that actually the Dreadnoks did when they dressed up as cowboys for that.
Sure.
Yeah, but that doesn't count, does it? Let's move on. It's not clear what figures were going to be used for the offer, but Dodger was heavily featured, so maybe we could have seen the Battle Force 2000 Survivor repainted. More than likely, it would have been random overstock that was probably piling up at GeForce HQ, but I can dream, right? The main reason given to the cancellation of the membership was owing to present economic conditions. It's a shame we didn't get this membership as advertised, but getting what we did was enough to make me very, very happy. So that's it. That's the fan club that never was. I'm sad they didn't get enough sign-ups to make it work, and considering Joes were being sold all the way up to until 1993, makes it clear to me that the reason they couldn't make it work was because of that. It was just they didn't get enough sign-ups. What any other kind of closing statements on that one, Pat?
Again, just I think that it's weird that they did send you something, but it was a sorry kid kind of message. But then you got a figure, you got stickers that you loved, a stencil that you enjoyed. I think it probably would have just been a lot easier for them to say, here it is, and sorry about those couple items that we mentioned.
Yeah, very true, very true.
You got to feel like you're in the fan club rather than, wow, the fan club is ending. That's just wouldn't necessarily enhance my enjoyment or hope for the future of the brand as a kid.
Yeah. And what is interesting is that we still had a couple of years of it as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, like I think there were toys being sold all the way up until like 94, I believe, as well. And then a couple of like, you get them in stores, little kind of like shops, like little Starlings shops. We had a lot of those in the little towns. It was like a franchise of stores that you would see, like sharing, like all the little kind of towns and villages would have these little kind of very small corner shop type size, but they were little toy shops, and they were called Starlings, and they'd have like a different name. Whoever owned that franchise would maybe change like the name of it or something, but they would all be Starlings. And there was one in Cromer, there was one in Sheringham. I believe there might have even been one in Norwich, but again, they were kind of dotted around. And every time we'd go into them, you'd see like Action Force, GI Joe figures and stuff like that. So, I was buying well into high school, like 92, 93. I picked up a few figures like, Destro, as in the one with the bigger collar, Duke, the tan and red. Who else did I pick up? A General Flag. So there were a few that were still kind of knocking about going into that era.
Did you ever? I know that you mentioning the smaller stores and the smaller chains. There was one near me where I loved going called Toy World.
Yeah.
And Toy World would occasionally have, they would actually have some of the mail-in stuff at the store, which is very, very strange to say.
Wow.
I remember seeing a bin of G.I. Joe figures with the red back file cards, and they had some of, and this was much later on. I want to, well, maybe not even much later on, because
still in the 90s.
No, it would have been in the 80s actually.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So did you ever find? I don't really know exactly what that situation was. I assume maybe it was overstock from something. I remember I did pick up one of the Omnibots actually physically at retail.
That's cool.
Point. So did you ever find anything like that where overstock mail-ins were being sold physically at one of the retail spaces?
Never ever saw that, honestly, or I never noticed it if it was there. Now, like I can tell you, like as you probably well know, you can or more or less remember most things when it comes to enjoyable things like finding toys in stores, and I have loads of anecdotes and stories about like the whole thing of like finding Ripper, but then also making the choice. It was either Ripper or the Axe motorized backpack, and I was like, why on earth did I still don't know why I made that decision to this day. But when it comes to that stuff, I mean, I would have missed things. I remember going into a store when I think this was around the time where Action Force had been rebranded. It was like 87-ish. And I believe I saw loads and loads of Palitoy Red Shadows and boxed vehicles and stuff still on the store shelf in the Co-op in Cromer. Now, that would have been again, like them just having stock still, or they might have, got it out the warehouse and put it out, or they might have got hold of it and thought, well, let's shift this. No way of knowing if that was the case, but that could have been a situation like that. Because I know that a lot of, like in a semi-relatable situation, a lot of overstock Robo Skulls were repackaged and sent out as, the next year. So like they were resold again with Cobra decals and stuff like that. But that was a lot of just overstock from the previous year that they had extra of. So in terms of seeing that stuff, I never really saw that. The only interesting things I found at retail were import toys. So Toys R Us, when I started going to Toys R Us in Peterborough, there was one in Peterborough, there were a couple in London, Birmingham. But they were very far away from where we lived. The one in Norwich didn't come about until much later in life, and I was, I wasn't a kid at that point. Still went in there, but that's not the point. So I would go into some of those Toys R Us stores, and they would have imported toys in there. It was around the time where they were still, I think they were still under the US ownership, or they were under the umbrella before they were bought by the German conglomerate or the European conglomerate. Now, you would see, like, I remember seeing a Ninja Turtles Technodrome, and we didn't get the Technodrome. I never saw the Technodrome other than that Ninja Turtles one, and I knew it was an import because it had Ninja Turtles written on it. I didn't look at it in detail, but I remember seeing the logo and going, oh my God, they're like imported toys. And that was like into the 90s. That was like 92, 91, 92, something like that. And then you had like G.I. I got my pulverizer was a Canadian pulverizer. So, and that was bought in a store, I think in Birmingham, John Menzies in Birmingham. And that was really interesting to me because I broke that open, and in it was like this mail away it had the Sarge in his winter jacket. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, for sure.
And he's like in the middle of the Arctic with his winter jacket on, and I remember seeing that, and that was a vehicle driver. That was a vehicle driver and vehicle promotion, wasn't it? Because it had like, I want to say Thunder was in it, and like people like that. And I remember seeing those figures and thinking, oh man, I'd love to do that. But it was the mail away address, no chance. It was like dollars and all that jazz. And there was a Canadian sticker instead of an American flag, like Canadian flag sticker. Never dawned on me that it was a Canadian release, because you just don't think about this stuff. You just think there's a product, I'm having it, yay. But that's the weirdest thing that I really came across.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't really remember too much stuff like that. I don't think that I ever found really any kind of multilingual or anything at retail from other countries. I think maybe I did find one of the Technobots at one point.
Yeah.
I did see that. But G.I. Joe, I did not. I think one of the great things about the mail-ins that is still a little bit of a mystery is that mail-ins were obviously a blend of overstock items and items that were made specifically for promotional reasons.
Yeah.
It really, to a point, gets to be unclear. And I would love to know the mystery, as far as UK stuff goes, of those yellow-backed Action Force figures.
Oh, hell yeah.
And we know from looking back at some of the earliest 3 3/4 convention items that a lot of those bagged figures that were coming to the United States were actually found overseas. And you had Moon Dancer, and you had Undercover Scarlet, who was but that doesn't really explain where those yellowback or yellow bubbled, I should say, figures come from. And if you look at those figures, they're definitely not the same as the standard release. So it's interesting to me how much of this mail-in stuff was borrowed from other countries, and Hasbro looking at South America for some things and looking to Europe and all around the world and making things happen, making ends meet for the kids and for the business side of it with all of these offers. But at the same time, it being a little bit weird because some of it was made brand new just for these offers. So I'm always left wondering about those things that probably will remain a mystery.
Yeah, and that's the kind of sad thing about it, isn't it? Because you think, at this stage in life, people that were working on it back then are probably a little bit later on in years. You've got people kind of dying off, sadly. But, just stuff like that. And it's a shame that you kind of think, are we at a point where we're never going to know about, this stuff any more than we already do? And, it's kind of why I like doing these panels. We get to kind of delve into it. We get to put it out into the open. And, if people do have any information, they can kind of contact us. They can contact, whoever it may be doing the D-class stuff, and they can kind of get a bit more information and paint this picture a bit better. Now, that brings us to the end of the panel, really. But before we go, I'd like to first off say that if you guys were aware, the Assembly Required, Brian, Assembly Required, have made G-Force stickers for this particular, for this event, which is really nice. So that was part of the, I suppose, one of the materials in relation to our panel today. So thanks to Brian for doing that. They're great. So, that takes me back as well, because I get to, I suppose, use those stickers again, probably stick them on my bed. I'm sure Kate won't mind. And also, shout out to the awesome Patch Czar, who hooked Pat and I up with these awesome GeForce patches after we brought the fan club to his attention at Joe Fest in 2019. One based on the classic gold logo and the other replicating the Aero combat sticker. How cool are those patches, Pat?
He got them done so quickly, and they're really high quality. Everything that he's put together is really great. I actually only first met him because of his patches. He has like a bag that he carries that just has them all over it. And you're looking at them and you're like, man, I know that these things, those were not things that just got, thrown out to retail somewhere and I missed them. There's way too many, and they're all really high quality. He does all of the logos that you'll see on the figure's arms, as well as just a ton of other things. It's definitely worth checking out.
I love his I Love Deke patch that he made just for me. That was amazing. Anyway, Pat, thank you so much for joining me, mate, for this. It's been an absolute blast talking about GeForce. And I kind of had to get you on this one because this is one that, I spoke to a few people about it, but you were the one that we really had this like lengthy conversation about it. And it's almost like become our thing, hasn't it? Like our little GeForce thing.
For sure. Yeah, we maybe it can be us sitting there in the future fortress, filling out the forms and completing this.
And it's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons, like these little mail away things, is one of the reasons I did the Full Force fan club for patrons. So if you're, if you want to kind of jump on the Patreon for the Full Force podcast, we have levels where you get a fan club pack with stickers and like magnets and a file card and stuff like that. So yeah, big shout out to our patrons on the Full Force. Massive shout out to Pat and Articulated Points and Phil Donnelly. You're doing a great job on Articulated Points, buddy. And of course, big shout to D-Class. You'll either see them next or you'll have seen them already. And we'd have both been involved in that anyway. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy Assembly Required. It's, again, been an amazing event so far. We love this. We love doing it. We love being involved in it. Thanks very much, Pat.
Thank you.
So, of course, at the end of all of these little shows that we do, like episodes or whatever it is, we always have to shout Full Force. We're going to do something slightly different for you guys this time. Pat, after 3, 1, 2, 3, full G-Force!